Funny thing about money, it's never really about the numbers, is it? It's about the weight it carries, the chains it locks around your chest, the way it decides whether you breathe easy or choke on the next bill. And just when you think you've been abandoned to scrape and claw forever, that's when the unexpected creeps in. A shift, a turn, a ripple in the fabric you thought was sealed tight. Not because you begged loud enough, not because you played the game perfectly, but because sometimes the script changes without warning. And suddenly, what once felt like drought tastes a little like rain. Money shifts when you least expect it. You sit there, staring at the numbers, convinced they've carved themselves into stone, mocking you with their stubborn refusal to grow. You calculate, you predict, you plan, and yet nothing seems to move. The more you stare, the heavier it feels, like chains tightening with every tick of the clock. And then, when you've given up hope, when you're not even looking, that's when it happens. The shift. A change so subtle, at first you almost miss it, but powerful enough to flip the weight you've been carrying for far too long. It doesn't come dressed in logic. It rarely arrives through the neat little formulas you've been taught. You expect money to move when you force it, when you grind yourself down, when you stretch yourself thin. But money doesn't obey your desperation. It obeys timing, flow, alignment. And just when you've convinced yourself you're stuck in a permanent drought, a door you never saw creaks open. An opportunity falls into your lap. A mistake turns into a miracle. What you thought was a dead end suddenly becomes the very path forward. The beauty and the madness of it is that you never see it coming. If you could predict it, you'd ruin it. You'd cling too tightly, chase too frantically, suffocate it before it had a chance to breathe. That's why the shift hides until the moment you've stopped clawing for control. It waits until you've collapsed into surrender, until you've accepted that nothing is moving, until you've stared so long into the emptiness that you almost believe it's permanent. And that's when the current turns. That's when the numbers flicker. That's when the drought breaks. Money has a way of mocking your control. You think you can manage it perfectly, but it always slips, always reminds you that you're not the master of the flow. You can chase, but the shift only comes when it decides to. And that unpredictability, that's the secret. Because it teaches you that wealth isn't just about accumulation. It's about surprise, disruption, timing. It teaches you that money can enter your life in ways you never imagined, through channels you never prepared for. It humbles you, because it proves you're not the one pulling the strings. Think of the times you were down to nothing, ready to break. You didn't have a plan. You didn't have an answer. And then, out of nowhere, a check arrived. A debt was forgiven. An idea took root that turned into income. You didn't orchestrate it. You couldn't have predicted it. Yet there it was, shifting the entire atmosphere around you. One moment of change, one unexpected turn, one flicker in the system, and suddenly you breathed again. And here's the strange part. The shift never feels like what you thought it would. It's not the grand payday you fantasized about. It's not the perfect scheme you had in your head. It's something different, smaller, stranger. And yet it moves everything. Because the power of the shift isn't in the size, it's in the timing. It's in the way it shows up when you're convinced you've been forgotten. It's in the way it pulls you from the edge just before you fall. That's why you can't measure life by the numbers alone. Numbers lie. They trap you in fear, convince you nothing will change. But money shifts when you least expect it. It doesn't play by your rules. It bends reality in ways you can't see coming. And while you're there, staring at the screen, sighing at the totals, sinking under the pressure, a shift is already forming somewhere you can't see. It's moving toward you quietly, slowly, deliberately. Waiting for the moment you'll be shocked enough to believe again. Scarcity teaches you what abundance can't. When you have less than you need, when every coin feels like a decision between survival and collapse, you start to see the world differently. Scarcity strips away the illusions abundance wraps you in. It forces you to stare at the raw bones of life, to question what really matters, to see value in the smallest things that most people overlook. You don't waste. You don't take for granted. You learn the weight of what others carelessly throw away. People think abundance makes you wise, but it doesn't. Abundance makes you numb. It blinds you, convinces you that resources are endless, that comfort is guaranteed. You forget hunger, you forget struggle, you forget how fragile the ground beneath you really is. Scarcity reminds you. Scarcity sharpens you. It teaches you discipline when abundance would have made you careless. It teaches you gratitude when abundance would have made you greedy. It teaches you endurance when abundance would have made you weak. When you're in scarcity, every choice is magnified. Every dollar is stretched. Every opportunity is weighed. Every mistake carries consequences. It hurts, yes, but it also builds. You begin to see creativity where others see walls. You discover solutions where others give up. You learn how to create something out of nothing. And that ability, born in scarcity, is worth more than money itself. Because when abundance finally comes, you won't waste it. You won't lose it. You won't let it slip through your fingers the way others do. You'll know what it costs to have nothing, and you'll never forget it. Scarcity also reveals people. When you're at your lowest, you see who disappears and who stays. You see who values you when you have nothing to offer, and who only valued what you could give. Abundance hides that. When you have more than enough, people gather, smile, play nice. Scarcity strips the mask away. You learn the truth about loyalty, love, and trust. It's painful, but it's real. And once you know, you can't unknow it. The strange thing is, scarcity teaches you to dream differently. Not just about wealth, but about life itself. When you're empty, you begin to imagine fullness in vivid detail. You don't take the picture of abundance for granted. You crave it, design it, shape it in your head until it becomes almost tangible. And that hunger, that's the fuel. Abundance never fuels you. It soothes you, lulls you, makes you lazy. Scarcity keeps you alive, sharp, desperate enough to move, to build, to fight. Of course, no one wants to be there. No one wants to live in scarcity, to feel the bite of hunger, the fear of bills, the shame of lack. But when you've walked through it, when you've survived it, it plants something inside you that abundance alone never could. It gives you a foundation. It gives you perspective. It gives you resilience. And one day, when the shift comes and the numbers finally tilt in your favor, you'll carry those lessons into abundance. You'll use them to protect yourself, to grow wisely, to never let yourself become blind again. Scarcity teaches you things abundance can't, because it strips away the easy lies. It shows you what matters. It shows you who matters. It shows you what you're capable of when the world thinks you're empty. And the irony is, when abundance finally arrives, it won't even be abundance that defines you. It'll be the lessons you carried from scarcity, the scars that taught you how to survive, the hunger that turned into fire. That's the real wealth. That's the real treasure. That's what you never lose, even when the numbers fall again. Breakthrough often hides behind struggle. Everyone wants the light without the tunnel, the victory without the bruises, the prize without the fight. But the truth is, struggle is the disguise that hides your turning point. It's the camouflage that keeps the reward just out of reach, waiting to see if you'll push through the pain long enough to deserve it. Breakthrough isn't denied to you. It's concealed, buried under layers of exhaustion, fear, and disappointment, daring you to dig deep enough to find it. Struggle is the test. It's the wall that stands between who you are and who you claim you want to be. Most people see the wall and turn back. They complain, they curse their luck, they talk about how unfair life is. But that wall isn't punishment. It's protection. It's making sure that only those willing to bleed for their dream will touch it. If the door was wide open, everyone would walk through. The wall keeps it sacred, keeps it valuable, keeps it from being wasted on the ones who would throw it away the moment it gets hard. And here's the cruel joke. The closer you are to the breakthrough, the heavier the struggle feels. It's like the universe piles it on, adding weight after weight, until you're convinced you can't go another step. That's the final test. That's the moment most people quit. But if they only knew, if they only realized that the weight pressing on them was proof they were inches away, they would keep going. The heaviness is the signal. Struggle doesn't mean it's over. It means you're nearly there. Struggle shapes you in ways ease never could. Ease makes you soft. Ease makes you careless. But struggle chisels you, sharpens you, makes you into something unrecognizable from who you were before. You think it's breaking you, but it's building you. Every tear, every scar, every sleepless night is carving you into someone who can handle the weight of the breakthrough when it finally arrives. Without the struggle, you wouldn't even be ready. You'd collapse under the very thing you thought you wanted. Think about the stories people tell when they make it. They don't talk about the moment the breakthrough arrived, as much as they talk about the struggle it took to get there. They remember the nights they almost gave up, the times they were rejected, the days they felt abandoned. Why? Because those moments were the fire. That was where their strength was forged. The breakthrough is just the reward, but the struggle is the proof. The proof that they became strong enough to hold it. And maybe that's why it has to hurt so much. Because the pain strips away the ones who aren't serious. The dreamers who like to talk but not bleed. The ones who want shortcuts. The ones who want comfort. They're gone by the time the breakthrough reveals itself. Only the ones who crawl through the mud, who scream into the darkness, and keep moving anyway, get to see what's on the other side. The struggle filters out the weak. It's easy to think you've been abandoned when life gets unbearable. Easy to believe the struggle means you're cursed, forgotten, doomed to fail. But what if it means the opposite? What if it means you've been chosen to hold something heavy, something rare, something not everyone gets to touch? What if the struggle is not proof of your weakness, but evidence of your destiny? Breakthrough often hides behind struggle because struggle is the doorway. It's the last barrier, the final gauntlet. You can't skip it. You can't bargain your way around it. You have to walk through it, bruised and bleeding, with nothing but the will to not collapse. And once you do, once you push past the weight and refuse to quit, that's when the disguise falls away. That's when the struggle reveals what it was hiding all along. The life you've been reaching for. Waiting on the other side of your pain. A single change can rewrite your stability. It doesn't take 100 moves, a lifetime of planning, or endless years of grinding. Sometimes it's one shift, one decision, one unexpected turn that flips everything you thought was permanent. People live as if their circumstances are carved in stone, as if the misery they're drowning in today will follow them forever. But life isn't stone. It's glass. It can shatter. It can crack. It can be reshaped by the smallest blow at the right time. That change can arrive in silence. A new connection. A phone call you weren't expecting. An idea that sneaks into your head when you can't sleep. A risk you finally decide to take. You don't see it coming. You don't dress up for it. You stumble into it by accident. And suddenly, the story bends. The ground that was shaking under your feet steadies. The weight that crushed your chest loosens. All because of one shift. The mind resists this idea because it wants predictability. It wants to believe that stability can only come from years of stacking bricks, one on top of another, until you've built some fortress. But life doesn't work that neatly. Sometimes the fortress never comes. Sometimes you're left exposed, vulnerable, and then, out of nowhere, a door opens that changes everything. The stability you thought would never arrive rushes in through one unexpected crack. And the irony, most people miss it. They're so obsessed with the big picture that they overlook the small pivot that carries the power to rewrite it all. They complain about how unfair life is, not realizing life already placed the key in their path. But it doesn't look like a key. It looks like inconvenience. It looks like failure. It looks like a risk too dangerous to touch. That's how the single change hides. It disguises itself as something you'd rather avoid. The weight of stability doesn't always come from money, either. Sometimes it's perspective. Sometimes it's confidence. Sometimes it's the realization that you don't have to live the way you've been living anymore. That kind of change, once it clicks in your head, makes everything else fall in line. The same problems remain, but you see them differently. You stop panicking. You stop running. And in that shift, your entire world steadies itself. One change can also expose how fragile your old stability was. The job you thought was secure disappears with one signature. The relationship you thought was forever collapses in one conversation. Stability isn't about clinging to what you have. It's about being ready to adapt when the change arrives. The people who survive aren't the ones who build the tallest walls. They're the ones who bend when the storm comes. And here's the dark humor of it all. Sometimes the very collapse you're terrified of is the change that brings real stability. Losing the job forces you into the work you were meant to do. Being abandoned pushes you to build strength no one can take away. Hitting the bottom teaches you how to stand without depending on anyone else. The crack in the glass feels like destruction, but it's really transformation. A single change is enough to rewrite your stability because life isn't fair, predictable, or controlled. It's chaotic. It's wild. It bends when it wants, not when you demand it. But hidden in that chaos is opportunity, waiting for you to stop clinging so tightly to the way things are. And once you accept that, once you open your eyes to the possibility that everything can turn in a moment, you start to see change not as an enemy, but as the very force that steadies you. One shift, one turn, one decision. Sometimes that's all it takes for your entire foundation to be rebuilt beneath your feet. Fear of lack is the real prison, not numbers. You stare at your account, at the balance that looks like a cruel joke, and you convince yourself that those digits are the chains holding you down. But it's not the numbers that cage you. It's the fear they create. Fear of not having enough. Fear of losing what little you do have. Fear that tomorrow will be worse than today. That fear builds walls higher than any debt, thicker than any bill, stronger than any poverty. The prison isn't financial. It's psychological. Numbers shift. They rise, they fall. They fluctuate with chaos you can't control. But fear roots itself in your chest, strangles every thought, poisons every decision. It makes you hesitate when you should act. It makes you cling when you should release. It makes you so obsessed with survival that you forget how to live. You start building your choices around what you might lose instead of what you could gain. And that's how the prison tightens, not with locks and chains, but with invisible bars made of worry. Fear of lack turns people into beggars, even when they're not broke. It convinces them they'll never have enough, no matter how much they hold in their hands. That's why millionaires still panic at the thought of losing it all. That's why people with plenty hoard and clutch, never satisfied. The fear whispers in their ear, what if it disappears tomorrow? That whisper is louder than the truth, louder than logic, louder than any number in the bank. Because once you let fear run the show, no amount will ever feel safe. This prison is powerful because it's invisible. You think you're making smart decisions, cautious decisions, responsible decisions. But really, you're moving from fear, not wisdom. You're cutting off opportunities before they grow, because you're scared to risk. You're sabotaging connections, because you're terrified of being used. You're choking yourself before the world even gets the chance to. That's the cruel trick. Fear makes you your own executioner. And the irony, the fear of lack often creates the very lack you're terrified of. When you act small, when you think small, when you cling too tightly, you shrink your world until there's no room for growth. You lock yourself into the very scarcity you wanted to escape. The prison feeds itself. The more afraid you are, the tighter the bars close in. The more you panic, the less you see opportunities. The more you hoard, the faster things slip through your fingers. Numbers can't define you. They can't dictate your future. They're temporary, fragile, meaningless without context. What defines you is how you move when the numbers look ugly, when the account is low, when the bills stack up higher than your courage. If fear runs you, you collapse. If faith runs you, you push forward. The difference isn't in the balance, it's in the mindset. The numbers might scream you're losing, but if you don't let fear turn that into a prison, you're still free. Fear of lack is the greatest thief because it steals the present. It drags you into imaginary tomorrows filled with disasters that haven't happened yet. You sit there, paralyzed, mourning money you haven't lost, panicking over problems that may never exist. And while you're trapped in that nightmare, life is happening without you. Opportunities pass, moments vanish, relationships wither. All because you let fear cage you in a future that doesn't even exist. The truth is, freedom isn't about having unlimited wealth. Freedom is about not being ruled by the fear of losing. That's why some people with little live bigger than people with much. That's why some souls shine, even when they're broke. They're not chained by fear. They know that life shifts. Money comes and goes, and no number can imprison them unless they hand over the key. Fear of lack is the real prison, not numbers, because numbers don't hold power over you until you let them crawl into your head and convince you they do.